Did you know that 50% of the world lives on less than $6.85 a day, and 9.2% of the world lives on less than $2.15 a day? The standard of living in the US is significantly higher, with the federal poverty line for an individual being defined as someone earning $14,580 or $40 per day. That number is $30,000 for a family of 4. Many foreign visitors to the US are surprised that such a developed superpower can still have 11.6% of its population living in poverty. Now, obviously, poverty in the US is different than poverty in many developing countries. For example, most of our cities have homeless shelters, state aid, subsidized housing, and a plethora of other forms of assistance. In this list, we'll look at the top 10 poorest cities in the US, examining cities that have at least 50,000 people. Stay tuned to the end for some of the richest cities in the US. Number 10 is Bloomington, Indiana, with a population of 80,000 people. The median household income is only $37,734, which is half of the national median income. Nearly 40% of all elementary school students in Bloomington qualify for free and reduced lunch. In total, 33% of the city lives in poverty, which is over 150% higher than the US average. Situated just an hour southwest of Indianapolis, Bloomington, despite its poverty rate, is still ranked as one of the best places to live in Indiana with a niche rating of A. It scores high in the categories of public schools, nightlife, and family atmosphere, but falls short when it comes to housing and crime. It's a small town with a big university, which means the town has plenty to do to meet the needs of the college culture. The town's population jumps during the school year as Indiana University Bloomington has 45,000 students. Ultimately, Bloomington is a great place to live. It is home to a world-class university, a thriving arts scene, great green space, and a real sense of community. It's a great place to put down roots, to raise a family, and to retire. However, Bloomington is not a great place to live for everybody, so why is that? The main reasons cited for poverty in Bloomington are difficulties finding high-paying jobs, expensive housing, and the overwhelming student population, which many locals claim are causing the city to appear as more impoverished than it actually is. After all, most college students don't exactly have disposable income. Number 9 is Reading, Pennsylvania, with a median household income of $37,107. The city has 35.2% of its residents with a household income lower than $25,000. You may have heard of Reading if you've ever played Monopoly and bought the Reading Railroad, which is in fact named for the Reading-Philadelphia train line. Reading is about an hour and 20 minutes northwest of Philly and has a population of just under 95,000 people. Reading falls within the Rust Belt, which has left generational poverty in its wake. Rust Belt cities are plagued by declining industry, aging and inactive factories, and a declining population. Reading's population had grown steadily until 1930, when it reached its peak of nearly 120,000, and then steadily declined until 2000, when the population actually began to grow again. Like some Rust Belt cities, there have been efforts to revitalize the city with park cleanups and opening up downtown real estate opportunities for businesses and residents. The hope would be to create jobs and stimulate the local economy. Despite the level of poverty, Reading has relatively cheap housing costs for a metro of its size and has been showing up as a great and up-and-coming place to live. And who wouldn't want to go downtown to see the actual real-life Reading Railroad to relive those childhood Monopoly days? Number 8 is Flint, Michigan. Flint needs little to no introduction, as it gained notoriety for its water crisis that left residents without clean water. It's another Rust Belt city living in the shadow of Detroit. The city has a population of 80,000 with a median household income of $37,102, with 36.3% of its population living on less than $25,000 a year. Flint wasn't always impoverished. In fact, it was quite the opposite. The city is home to the birthplace of both Buick and General Motors. Once the epicenter of the thriving auto industry, like many cities in the Rust Belt, when companies began moving operations overseas and closing down domestic factories, all that was left was urban blight, poverty, unemployment, and dilapidated infrastructure. At one time, a whopping 81% of all students in the Flint School District qualified for free lunch. The state and city have embarked on rolling out some innovative initiatives to provide all students with 2 meals during the school day to eliminate the stigma of those receiving free lunch due to income. And so, beginning in 2023, all students in Michigan public schools, not just Flint, will receive breakfast and lunch for free regardless of income. Number 7 is Greenville, South Carolina, which may come as a shock to anyone who has been there and walked through its adorable downtown, which has a waterfall running right smack dab in the middle of the downtown. Greenville is a vibrant college town and has all the hallmarks of a thriving town, so why is it on this list? The numbers don't lie. With a population of 73,000 people, the median household income is only $36,687, with 35.9% of its population living on less than $25,000 a year. The history of poverty in the South has been ongoingly burdened by gentrification as people flee states like New York and California. They are able to find cheap housing and flourishing nightlifes in many of these small towns. Ironically, the influx of new residents and the economic boom has been a reason for the increase in poverty. Housing in Greenville was once affordable but has skyrocketed over 200% in recent years as people flood the area. While transplants can live like royalty, locals are being priced out of their historical neighborhoods. A study in 2019 by United Way of Greenville County in partnership with Furman University showed that life for a significant portion of Greenville area residents is getting harder, and the services that help them are getting geographically harder to access. So while Greenville keeps topping lists of best college towns and places to live, the poverty is ever increasing. Number 6 is Birmingham, Alabama. Known as the Magic City, sadly for its residents, the city is lacking said magic. Birmingham is rich in its history, but not immune to poverty. At the end of the Civil War, only 100 people lived in Birmingham. Now, with a population of just under 200,000 people, this city is the biggest on our list so far. Of its residents, the median household income is $36,614, and 34.8% live on less than $25,000 a year. Birmingham is a vibrant city, home to the Civil Rights Museum and tethered to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous letter from Birmingham jail. It has a thriving food scene with craft breweries popping up all over the city, and yet the city is getting poorer, not richer. In fact, Birmingham was ranked the second worst place to live in the US, losing out only to Detroit. Reasons keeping the city from thriving are its crime rate, lack of employment growth, poor educational attainment, and housing affordability. One thing that the city has going for it has been that its racial disparities are small and getting smaller. The city is 68.7% black and dramatically increasing its homeownership among its majority-minority communities. Number 5 on this list will come as no surprise to anyone who has been awake for the past decade or so, and that's Detroit, Michigan. With a population of just over 632,000, the median household income is $36,140, and 36.8% live on less than $25,000 a year. From 1950 to 2010, the population declined by over 61%. If you drive through Detroit, it's hard not to be struck by the dystopian, almost apocalyptic reminder of what was once a thriving metropolis. Abandoned buildings, urban blight, decaying theaters, and abandoned houses are all that's left of America's former automobile capital. A third of the total land area of Detroit was vacant in 2012, and between 2005 and 2015, 1 in 3 Detroit properties have been foreclosed. In its heyday, Detroit had a population of over 1.5 million residents. Jobs were plentiful, hotels were luxurious, and it was a place that people wanted to be. On July 18, 2013, Detroit became the largest US city to declare bankruptcy. 10 years later, the city is rumored to be on the comeback. Though the city has recovered financially, it will be a long road for its residents. Number 4 on this list is San Marcos, Texas. Nestled halfway between Austin and San Antonio, the city has a population of 69,000 people. The median household income is $36,080, and 38.8% of the population live on less than $25,000 a year. This city is lesser known to those outside of Central Texas, but has the numbers to come in at number 4. Around 53.5% of all students qualify for free or reduced lunch. The student body is 73.3% Hispanic, and over 13% of students do not speak English as a first language. These factors contribute to the employment gap in the city between native and non-native speakers. The San Marcos economy is dominated by businesses that cater to Texas State students, such as retail employment at the Outlet Mall. Experts say those sectors provide plenty of jobs, but not high-paying or stable ones needed to run a household. Non-native speakers are further disadvantaged as they are often relegated to labor jobs which can be seasonal, temporary, or just not high-paying enough to thrive. Despite this, the poverty in San Marcos spreads out evenly across all racial groups, showing a broader problem with the economy than just access to language and thus jobs. The number one cause of poverty cited by many experts is the rising cost of housing. Like Austin and San Antonio, the cost of living in San Marcos is steeply rising, but unlike Austin and San Antonio, access to high-paying, skilled jobs are not as plentiful. Number 3 is Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland is another victim of the infamous Rust Belt decline that plagued every state from New York to Michigan and then some. The city has 368,000 residents with a median household income of only $35,562, with 36.3% living on less than $25,000 per year. Cleveland's median income is less than half that of the national average, but given that it's an urban center, it can be as expensive as any other Midwestern city. A third of those living in poverty in Cleveland worked full-time or the full year and still remained in poverty. A whopping 87% of students in Cleveland qualify for free or reduced lunches in school. Almost half of all children in Cleveland live in poverty. 1 in 7 residents do not know where their next meal is coming from, and 1 in 4 senior citizens were at risk of hunger. These numbers are a sobering reminder of the juxtaposition of being one of the richest nations in the world while still having profound hunger plaguing our most vulnerable populations. One area that is making a comeback is its tourism industry. Cleveland does, after all, boast the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Cleveland Guardians, and a Christmas Story house, which was the actual house they used to film the famous movie that follows Ralphie Parker and his quest for a Red Ryder BB gun. Number 2 is Jackson, Mississippi. Mississippi is one of the poorer states, and its capital is no exception. In fact, this is the only capital city to make this list. Jackson has about 150,000 people with a median household income of just $35,070, with 36.6% living on less than $25,000 a year. 78% of all students in Jackson qualify for free or reduced lunch. Mississippi is the most food-insecure state in the nation, and Jackson is a large contributor to that fact. Ironically, in 2017, Jackson was named America's fattest city. While many people may misinterpret obesity with an excess of food, in reality, it's indicative of the inability to access and afford healthy food. For the same price as a bag of lettuce, you can buy 38 packs of ramen noodles, 4 2-liter bottles of soda, and 25 munchkins, aka donut holes. The obvious cost difference between healthy produce and locally sourced meat versus prepackaged food loaded with preservatives is evident in the health crisis facing Jackson. During the era of slavery, food was often used as a tool to control people, and now, once again, food is keeping people in bondage. Before we get to number 1, let's take a look at some of the richest cities in America. Dublin, California has a median household income of $205,219, with 77.5% of the population living on more than $100,000 a year. The second richest city is Sammamish, Washington, with a median household income of $201,370 and 79.9% living on more than $100,000 a year. And the third richest city is Palo Alto, California, with a median household income of $195,781, with 70.9% living on over $100,000 per year. That is quite the contrast from the rest of this list. And now for number 1. It's a city you may not have heard of, but nonetheless, it is number 1 on this list. That is Pharr, Texas. Pharr is on the Mexican border, and its next closest city is Reynosa, Mexico. Pharr has a population of 80,000 with a median household income of only $32,217. This is just above the federal poverty line. 37.7% of the population lives on less than $25,000 a year. About 65% of students qualify for free or reduced lunch in the Pharr San Juan Alamo Independent School District. In the school system, 50.9% of students do not speak English as a first language, which makes sense given its location on the border. The poverty rate in Pharr is 129% higher than the national average. To combat this high poverty rate, the town is encouraging businesses to locate within Pharr. Texas has consistently been ranked as one of the most business-friendly states in the country, so Pharr is trying to capitalize on that to improve its economy.